When this war began, almost no one believed Ukraine could ever command the skies. In early 2022, Russia entered the battlefield with one of the largest and most heavily armed air forces on the planet, an arsenal that dwarfed Ukraine's by more than 10 to 1. On paper, air superiority belonged to Moscow before the first missile was ever launched. Ukraine had fewer than 100 operational fighters, most of them aging Soviet-era jets built in the 1980s. Its air defense network was outdated, analog, and stretched thin. And yet, by 2024, the impossible happened. Ukraine's interception rate surged past 83%. More than 4 out of every 5 Russian missiles never reached their targets, shot down or neutralized before impact. What began as a desperate attempt to survive had transformed into something unimaginable: dominance. Russia's billion-dollar air defense architecture, once considered among the most advanced in the world, was being carved apart, methodically, relentlessly. Ukraine was no longer just defending itself, it was reshaping the air war entirely, relying on precision, intelligence, and rapid adaptation. By 2025, Ukraine had achieved something Western militaries had theorized for decades but never actually executed: the systematic destruction of a near-peer nation's integrated air defense system. And they did it not with overwhelming power, but with drones, ingenuity, and asymmetric warfare. Independent analysts like Oryx visually confirmed the scale of the collapse. Between 18 and 40 Russian launchers destroyed, 3 major radar systems eliminated, and multiple command posts and support vehicles wiped out. Every strike was intentional, no random victories. This was a multi-year campaign designed to slowly blind Russia, bit by bit. One of the most significant blows came in late June 2025. Ukraine's intelligence directorate, the HER, announced a precision strike deep inside occupied Crimea. Key elements of Russia's S-400 network were obliterated: 91 and 6E Big Bird long-range radars, vital surveillance tracking systems, and a major launcher. These massive radars were the beating heart of Russia's southern air defense grid, designed to detect stealth aircraft at extreme distances and high altitudes. Once destroyed, they left yawning blind spots over Crimea and southern Ukraine. Suddenly, the fearsome S-400 batteries, those towering symbols of Russian military pride, were reduced to little more than expensive steel tubes, powerful but blind. Even Russia's newer S-350 VTS systems began collapsing. Many were struck directly. One was reportedly destroyed by Russia itself, after a launcher accidentally rolled into its own minefield and triggered an anti-tank mine. But the operation that redefined the air war came just days later. A mission Ukraine called Operation Spiderweb. It became the most daring drone attack ever carried out in modern military history. Using 117 first-person view drones, small, cheap, disposable, Ukraine simultaneously struck 5 Russian air bases across 5 different time zones. Every drone had been smuggled inside Russia months earlier, hidden inside trucks until the moment of launch. The targets were some of Russia's most strategic bomber bases, home to the 2 95 Bears and 2 22M backfires that had rained cruise missiles on Ukrainian cities since the start of the war. One of the attacks reached as far as Belaya Air Base, deep in Siberia, more than 500 miles from Ukraine. For the first time ever, Ukrainian weapons hit Siberian soil, yet not a single missile crossed the border. All 117 drones launched from inside Russia. Intelligence sources claimed the operation took 18 months to plan, and that President Zelensky oversaw the mission personally. The results were historic: nearly 1/3 of Russia's long-range bomber fleet damaged or destroyed in a single coordinated strike. These losses were irreplaceable. The destroyed aircraft weren't just expensive, they were relics of an earlier era. Their production lines shut down more than 30 years ago. Russia simply couldn't rebuild them. Operation Spiderweb proved that Ukraine could reach anywhere inside Russia, and that cheap drones could defeat billion-dollar air defense systems. This air campaign followed 2 parallel strategies: eliminate Russia's eyes, its radars, launchers, and bombers, and then destroy its veins and arteries, the ammunition and fuel depots that kept those systems alive. 7 of Russia's 20 major missile and artillery depots sat within 435 miles of Ukraine. One by one they were struck, Each destroyed depot meant fewer missiles, fewer bombs, and shrinking operational capacity across the front. With radars down, launchers crippled, and depots burning, Russia's air defense grid began collapsing under its own weight. Systems once used to protect Moscow and Crimea struggled to even defend regional supply hubs. At the same time, Russia's aviation sector was breaking under the pressure of sanctions and attrition. Civilian airlines were cannibalizing perfectly good aircraft for spare parts. Major production goals, like building 10 new domestic aircraft by 2030, quietly shrank to barely 90. According to RAND, Russia's Air Force operated at less than 75% of its pre-war capacity by late 2024. It was losing roughly 60 aircraft a year, while producing fewer than 20 replacements. Meanwhile, Ukraine's growing air power completely changed the ground war. When you control the skies, or even deny them to your enemy, you control movement on the ground. Ukraine carved out air corridors where its jets, drones, and cruise missiles could operate almost freely. Western-supplied F-16s and Mirage 2000s now struck Russian convoys, artillery positions, and supply lines with precision. Russia's once rapid territorial advances slowed to a crawl, from capturing 46,000 square miles in the first 5 weeks of 2022 to just over 5 square miles per day in 2025, and Ukraine wasn't done. In mid-2025, Ukrainian drones struck a defense plant in Cheboksary 600 miles inside Russia, destroying production equipment for Shahed drone components and electronic warfare systems. The message was unmistakable: nowhere in Russia was safe anymore. Deprived of air cover, Russian ground forces shifted to defensive survival. Convoys moved at night. Supply trains avoided daylight. Even elite paratroopers relied on camouflage, decoys, and deception. Ukraine's air supremacy became one of its strongest diplomatic tools. The same day Operation Spiderweb was unveiled, Zelensky announced a Ukrainian delegation heading to Istanbul for direct peace talks. Russian military bloggers called it Russia's Pearl Harbor moment, a symbolic shock showing that Ukraine now negotiated from strength. Every successful strike reinforced Western confidence that supporting Ukraine was not charity, it was investment with results. So how did Ukraine achieve what many considered impossible? It began with understanding the weaknesses in Russia's carefully curated image. The S-400 may have been marketed as one of the world's most advanced systems, but it had flaws. Its 91/6E radar excelled at tracking high-altitude jets, but struggled with low-lying drones skimming the terrain. Ukraine exploited these blind spots relentlessly. The S-400's entire architecture also relied on synchronized radars, Big Bird, clamshell, gravestone. Take out one, and the system lost coordination. That's exactly what Ukraine targeted. Once central radars were destroyed, the launchers were useless. This combined doctrine, Soviet knowledge infused with Western flexibility, became Ukraine's secret weapon. As Russia scrambled, its defensive improvisations bordered on desperation. Bombers covered in car tires, camouflage paint, wooden decoys on runways. None of it slowed Ukraine's evolving drone technology. The cost ratio was devastating: a $600 drone destroying a multi-million-dollar aircraft, a $200 FPV blind, citing a $500 million S-400 battery. And with every radar node that fell, Russia was forced to either leave a region exposed or pull systems from elsewhere, creating a domino effect of vulnerabilities. Even with nearly 40% of its federal budget pouring into defense, Russia couldn't replace what it was losing. Oil and gas revenues collapsed, shadow fleets drained resources, and sanctions tightened around the economy. Ukraine, meanwhile, operated like a decentralized technology startup. More than 500 local manufacturers, factories, small firms, garage inventors fed its drone innovation network. New ideas spread instantly through Ukraine's Delta intelligence platform, allowing rapid upgrades that Russia's state-run bureaucracy couldn't keep up with. This shift in warfare is now echoing around the world. NATO, China, and Middle Eastern states are studying Ukraine's model, realizing that traditional air superiority, built on trillion-dollar fleets of jets and missiles, may be outdated. The future belongs to low-cost swarms, intelligent networks, and rapid adaptation, but despite Ukraine's successes, the future remains uncertain. Air superiority alone doesn't end wars, it reshapes them. Russia still has manpower, resources, and a political system built for long conflicts. If Moscow drags the war into prolonged attrition, Ukraine will need to move even faster, or the opposite could happen. Russia could buckle under the weight of its own failing industries, shrinking economy, and collapsing morale. If that moment comes, it won't simply be a battlefield defeat. It will be the end of an entire military era. For now, the world watches as Ukraine rewrites the rules of modern warfare. What started as a desperate defense has become a global turning point, proof that in the 21st century, innovation defeats numbers, precision defeats power, and adaptability defeats pride. Ukraine doesn't just survive anymore. It commands the air, it shapes the battlefield, it owns the sky.